Robert.
Okay, I hear you.
Hey, right on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Thorsten. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing all right.
All
Hey,
right.
I even took a shower.
You want to be clean when you talk to me?
I have to be clean when I'm talking to you. I need it.
Well, I appreciate that. All right. All right. This Friday. What time? Now, why were you outside in the first place? You were looking up in the sky, right?
I was just out there looking at the sky, and I saw this. I thought it was Venus too when I first saw it, but I realized it was too early for Venus.
Mm-hmm. And where? I mean, obviously, it was in the southwest part, right? Is that what you saw at first?
It was a southwestern direction,
Right.
up pretty high.
Okay. And about what time did you see it?
When I first saw it was 5:30.
Wow, 5:30.
Yep.
You called me a little after 6, right?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, like you always say, you got to get it on film first before you...
Yeah. So you were actually looking at it an hour before we were then, almost.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay, then let's hold time out then. Then this thing was up in the sky for 3.5 hours, because because you saw it for an hour, we saw it for another 2.5 hours. Huh?
Yeah,
Where's Robert?
I watched it fade away around 8 o'clock and started heading in.
Okay. People want to know where Robert's at. Robert is at the corner of Fruit and Shaw. Okay, this is where he lives. This is where he has been getting all the videos on my website. Practically belong to him. Okay, all the great videos of all the UFOs except for one, which was shot by Amanda. That's the triangle in Clovis. But everything, pretty much all the other ones have been shot by Robert. Robert has 3 UFO YouTube channels that has nothing but weird things in the sky. Now, when Robert videotapes, now you have to understand something. Our military. Fresno is right in the middle of Area 51, China Lake, and Lemoore Naval Air Base, and we have the 144th Fighter Wing here in Fresno. So we have a lot of military everywhere. I would not be surprised if the military is using Fresno as a guinea pig and testing a lot of this stuff over us. But there's a lot of times that there are stuff going over us, and then all of a sudden we have our jets take off out of the airport and chase these things over Fresno. And we have witnessed that. Matter of fact, Robert has gotten video of that. Have you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's on that's on YouTube. I mean, you would call me and say, Jeff, I'm looking at something, and all of a sudden the jets are chasing them, and then here's Robert is videotaping all this action. I remember we had an incident, 2 years ago. I had a sergeant from the Fresno Police Department call me from the River Park area, which is north of Fresno. And he identified himself as, "Hi, Jeff." I go, "Yes." I go, I'm a sergeant with the Fresno PD, and I just wanted to let you know that there was something hovering over River Park." And he hung up the phone. Not more than 5 minutes later, I got 2 more calls. And I remember it was like about 6:30 because my wife and I were watching 2.5 Men on TV. And when those 2 calls came in, after that, we heard the jet start taking off out of the airport, one right after the other. I mean, there must have been 5 of these things, full throttle, just jamming out of the airport. And then I looked at my wife and I said, "Oh, shoot." And I ran outside and I couldn't see anything. That's when Robert Thorsten called me, and that's when he said, "Dude, there was something floating north of Fresno," and I was videotaping it, and then all of a sudden, the jet started chasing it. Ladies and gentlemen, would our military be chasing our own craft over public houses, private property? Because what if let's say they were doing a training mission and over a populated area, and all of a sudden one of these jets crashed, and then we get this on video like Robert did. I've talked to military personnel. We don't do that. Okay, when they test stuff like this, either they test it over the desert or over the ocean, away from people's eyes. Because what if this thing is highly top secret, and all of a sudden somebody like Robert gets it on video? Boom, it's all over. So this guy from the military personnel, Matter of fact, he was on with us a while back when we actually had an encounter like that. And he witnessed the whole thing. He came on the air and he pretty much said, Jeff, I'm in the military. I know that we do not test stuff like this over public land, period. Because why do we want to let the public know what we're doing, what we're actually flying? Now, at nighttime, no, we don't do that. He says, we have Area 51, we have China Lake over the mountain ranges. We do the testing over there, not over Fresno, not over Sanger, not over, frickin' Selma or anything like that. But that's what's happening, and these jets are chasing them. Now, going back to the on Friday's UFO, this thing I know for a fact was in space. Is that right, Robert? I mean, this thing was over the clouds, right?
It sure looked like it was way up there. That's why I thought it was a star.
Right. And that's why it threw me off for a loop too, because I thought it was a star, and not, Alan thought it was a star. Everybody thought it was a star, and until it started dimming and not getting bright and coming back and forth. And that's what I said about yesterday, that if this thing was in our atmosphere and wasn't ours, I guarantee you 5 jets would have probably taken off out of the Fresno Air Terminal and chased this thing. But I bet you anything NORAD knew this thing was in orbit, and there was no reason to dispatch these jets, because the jets cannot go into into space, period.
Or it was theirs.
Or if it was theirs. So let's take you have to take all that into consideration. Is it ours? Obviously we probably knew, or I'm sure NORAD knew it was there, but didn't do anything about it. Now, what was funny is that on Friday, for all those who witnessed, just like me and Alan and everybody else, we witnessed these planes coming by and dropping contrails directly under this object, like if they were trying to cover it up. So Rob, I mean, you pretty much saw it, for almost 3.5 hours, dude.
Yeah, that's right. It was like 3 hours.
3.5 hours. Because I remember on your, you were running out of videotape. And you probably, now did you videotape the whole 3.5 hours?
No, I watched it for about 10 minutes before I realized it wasn't a star. And I started video recording it at around 5:40. And then I did it on and off for like 3 hours. I video, parts of it on and off.
Right.
I wasn't prepared to have. I didn't have all these tapes ready. I didn't have all my tapes ready for that long of an event.
Sure.
I had to change the battery too. I had to change the battery in my camcorder.
Wow. Yeah. This I think is going to go down on Fresno's history as one of the best sightings I think so far that we have had. Because like I said, NBC News called me right away, and they're saying, Jeff, do you see that? And they're asking my advice. What is it? And right at the producer on the phone with me, and I told them, and I gave him the theories, and I debunked every single one. And that's when he said, okay, well, we're going to talk about this tonight, and we're running short on time, and we might call you back and see if you want to go on, whatever. And I said, okay, I'm here if you guys need me, whatever. And that night when I saw it on TV, they were a little dumbfounded. The newscasters were like, okay. They didn't know what to say. Because you know why? Because the cameraman from NBC 24 actually got it on video, folks. But he didn't do a good job of zooming in on it. Even Alan knows. He goes, man, the equipment that these people have, he should have been able to zoom in on that sucker. Now, depending on what kind of lens on it, I don't know. That's about cameras.
Like, I know his camera is around 20,000 or up.
Uh-huh.
And the lens on them, they could be at the top of a stadium and zoom in on the numbers of a football player.
Okay.
And our little camera is like the one that we use.
Right.
They can't do that, like that clear.
Right.
He could have zoomed right in and he could have made it so nice.
Oh my gosh. And he didn't do that. And again, you know what?
I thought he did it on purpose.
You think so?
He was giving it the look of what he was seeing from his perspective. Instead of zooming in on it, he was only showing what he was seeing.
What he was seeing.
Right.
And that I can understand that, because he doesn't have the experience in shooting something that far. Why would he want to? That's not what he's paid to do. He's paid to, videotape a reporter on a outside of a, burning building or whatever. He's not paid to shoot up at stars and zoom in on it. He just probably wasn't ready for it. Okay, Robert, how long have you been doing this?
I've actually been doing this since 2006.
I thought longer than that for some reason. 6 years?
I've been watching the skies for like 15, 20 years.
Yeah. But what made you start videotaping stuff though? I mean, it's just because people were not believing you?
No, that one night when that UFO followed me home early in the morning.
Oh, that's when you're on your bike, huh?
Yeah, I was on my bike at 3 o'clock in the morning. Something was following me home, and I just, for some reason, I ran into the house. I grabbed my mom's little camera. I never used it before. I grabbed it. I go, I got to get the camera. I don't know why I said that. I just got the camera. And that's when I started filming, and that's how it all started.
And you have to understand, you guys, there is so much activity in our skies, and people don't know. And I'll tell you why you don't know. It's because you're not outside like Robert is on a daily basis. Now, you have to understand, people think Robert gets a lot of stuff on video, and I'll tell you why. Robert is, you were injured in a motorcycle accident, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't work, and you're pretty much physically disabled, right?
Yeah, I can't do certain things. I mean, I can't do it very long.
Right. So basically right now he's, he can't work, so he pretty much stays home now, and that's all he does. This is why he has the time to go out and skywatch, and people don't realize that. And it's not like he goes outside 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and he gets all this stuff on video. This guy is outside hours after hours after hours, and and that's why he gets so much good stuff. It's because he's actually out taking the time. So, when people say he's photoshopping it and making it all up, you don't have that type of sophisticated equipment at home. I've seen your stuff, dude. It's like ancient old.
I don't have nothing. I got the basic nothing.
Right, I know you do. And you're not a computer geek. All you have is a camera that you can plug into the back of your computer and download it to YouTube, maybe, make a movie out of it, add some music, whatever, but that's it, okay? He doesn't know how to do this Photoshop crap, and like everybody's been telling him that he can do. So, people need to pretty much get a life and stop criticizing him and me, because, when you put this video up, people right off the bat said, oh, the dude Photoshop. I can't believe that. There's no way. You hoaxed it. It's a hoax. People were saying that right off the bat. And I'm going, and there was a couple of people who said that on my wall on Facebook, and I let them have it. And, because I am not a liar. I know Robert Thorson. He is not a liar. We're not hoaxing this stuff. This stuff is actually happening. So for those people who don't believe, I don't give a what, okay? This stuff is happening right now over our skies. The reason why we are getting it now on video, it's now because we have a nice system set up. I have sky watchers. I have a 24-hour UFO hotline. People are calling me when this stuff is up in the sky. I'm able to contact my sky watchers. They go outside, they get the video cameras, and they start recording. I have Alan doing it now. I have Jimmy doing it now. I have, Robert, Shaw, and Fruit. I have Amanda down in the Academy and Shaw Avenue, and I have people everywhere. So we have a system going on here, and it's working, okay? And for those people who can't believe we actually got a system going, well, tough. We do, okay? And it's working great because the military is pissed off at us, big time, okay? And how do we know that they're pissed off? It's because they're actually following us. Some of us we're being followed. And for all those who know that, the National Geographic has a UFO show coming out and I'm going to say in about 2 to 3 months, and it's going to put Fresno on the frickin' UFO world map, because the stuff they got on video is going to blow you away, and it's pretty much going to say, you know what, Jeff and Alan and Robert has been doing is totally fact and legit. Because the National Geographic is pretty much going to show you on TV in front of millions of people what is actually happening in Fresno. The host of the show pulled me aside and he says, dude, when this thing airs, he goes, you're going to be getting calls from all over the world because Fresno is now going to be considered another Roswell, New Mexico. Why? It's because of the triangle crash we had north of Fresno. They have some stuff that they're going to show you on film that's pretty much going to validate what happened on that mountain. And it's going to blow people away. It's going to blow people away. So, all right, Robert, I appreciate you coming on. All I can say is keep up the good work, you know, and I know you know, what's funny, people, is that Robert Thorson, to this day, is still getting death threats. Okay, and we don't know who from. We think maybe from people who think he's hoaxing all this. They're actually threatening his life. They've actually drove in front of his house. And, you know, he's actually contacted the FBI, the proper authorities, and notified them on what's going on. He gets death threats because he's getting so much stuff on film, he's pissing them off. Uh-oh, peeps say it's up there now? No?
There's a guy on chat saying it is, but he's also been saying it's Venus the whole time in here. You know?
Oh, it's hard to say about that one.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, well, there you go. All right, Robert, I appreciate you coming on. And like I said, you know, don't stop what you're doing. Don't ever stop what you're doing. And the next time you see something, you know what to do, and you have been doing it. You've been calling me on my 24-hour hotline, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wish you didn't talk so much, and I got a chance. No.
No, I mean, do you want to say anything to everybody? I mean.
No, I do. I have got death threats. I have somebody driving by my house, taking pictures of my house, putting on YouTube. I got all kinds of death threats.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe it because, you know, I know what you've been getting. I know that people don't believe you, and they think you're hoaxing this stuff, and you're not. And I'm going to say 80% of these people are jealous of you, and that's the reason why they're saying this and trying to debunk you all the time is because they're freaking jealous of what you're getting on film. Like I said, this Friday, this video that you got, I think is probably the best video that you have ever gotten and that I have ever seen close up. That's a freaking craft. I don't care what anybody says. That's not a balloon. That's an actual craft in space that was hovering for 80 freaking minutes. Or longer, because Robert actually was, you know, videotaping it longer.
That's what makes it not space junk.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, space junk's going to move at a certain rate like a satellite.
Exactly.
Never hover.
Oh, it's never going to hover at one spot. Never. And the thousands of people who witnessed this on Friday they were witnessing it hovering and, you know, rotating and dimming and dim out, bright and dim. And then all of a sudden it starts moving eastward? Really? Okay. So, all right, Robert, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you coming on tonight, and you know, keep listening, and don't you ever not call me when you see something. All right?
Yeah, I'll definitely. I always call you.
Oh, you always call me, brother. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Talk to you later, man. Thanks.
Later, Robert.
See you guys later.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Coolio. Okay, let me drink some.
Right on, Robert. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is. But all those who don't know, too, and I talked about this yesterday, the movie, The Battle of Los Angeles, everybody has seen that movie. Sony Pictures used one of his videos on a trailer for the movie. Paid him $500 for like 3 seconds of a clip. That's on YouTube. Matter of fact, the video or the video of the UFO that he shot is on my website. It's the one, the triangle with like 5 or 6 lights in a triangle formation, you know, flying type of deal. They actually use that in one of the trailers. So people know of him, people know of us, the networks are watching us, the news people are watching us, everybody is watching us right now because of what's happening over Fresno. What I want to do right now is I want to open it up for people in wherever. Did anybody see this yesterday on Friday? I want you to call me right now and let's talk about it. If you saw something different, if you can identify it, if you can give us something that we don't know about, that we haven't talked about, you know, call me up anyways and tell me where you were when you saw it and what time. Call me right now at area code 559-287-8367. 559-287-8367. I don't care where you're at. Just, call me and say, hey, Jeff, this is so-and-so. I live in so-and-so. If you live in Fresno, tell me the cross street that you're at. And say, yeah, I saw it about this time. How many people saw it? How long you guys witnessed it for? And this, don't be afraid. Just call me really quick, and I won't have you on there for a little, for that long. We'll just talk about it really quick. Don't be afraid. Call in. Come on, people. And then, like I said, we'll talk about it a little bit. In about 15 minutes, we're going to have David Paulides for the Missing 411 book. This is going to be an awesome interview. What we're going to do, we're going to go on for 2 hours with him. We're going to take an because we have. Oh my gosh, I didn't bring it in here. Hold on here. I'm going to do something. What I want to do is stand by, guys. So what we're going to do is at the intermission on the top of the hour is we're going to let David take a little break, 5-10 minutes, because we don't have commercials on here yet. And we have 2 books to give away tonight. And we're going to do it at the intermission, which is going to be right around the 8 o'clock hour. And Alan is going to basically tell you what number to call in. And we're going to get only one person per book can only win. So when you call in, you let us know which one you want, the West Coast or the East Coast. And so just thank you, wifey. So and again, that'll happen at the 8 o'clock hour. Now, while we're here, I'd like to say that for those who weren't here yesterday, we have our first sponsor. Dun, 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 dun. Liquid Nitro Energy Drink has come on board as the first sponsor for SPS Radio. We are going to be working really tight with these guys, and I got a feeling good things are going to be coming from Liquid Nitro Energy Drink, and I'm going to have one right now. I don't care what you guys do. My only energy drink that I used to drink was Red Bull. But to be honest, and I'm not just saying it because they're my freaking sponsors now, this thing goes down a lot smoother than Red Bull. I don't know why. Okay? I like this stuff a lot better. So this is going to be my drink from now on. They are in Fresno, in certain stores, but they're moving up just like we are. And that's why we have decided to work together to promote each other on our way up the stairs. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with these guys. They're going to be sponsoring a lot of events for us, and we're going to be going to a lot of their events in our research ambulance. We're going to be setting up shop. We're going to be talking to people who like the paranormal. We're going to be able to give away energy drinks probably on the air, give away posters, the whole 9 yards. So this thing is really, really going to help out SPS Radio and Sanger Paranormal Society, and it's gonna take off basically. So on my Facebook wall, what I did is I list all of the stores in Fresno that carry this drink. Tonight, after the show, I'll go ahead and list it again, so that way you guys can go out and get this. Because the more you help them out, the more they're gonna help us out. Simple as that. Okay. Liquid Nitro, our first sponsor, yay! And I hope it continues where we get more sponsors. But it's we're moving up, people. I don't care what I mean. Everybody listens to this show. Everybody watches me on Facebook because the stuff that's happening in Fresno, I don't want to say it's not happening anywhere else, but we have a system here in Fresno, and it's working. We have a network. And it's working. People can go outside when there's something in the sky, because we now are getting informed when this thing is happening. And therefore, that's why we get this stuff on video and on film. Because, the network that we have, it's working. It's absolutely working. And people are realizing that. And people want to get on board with us because, great things are coming. And it's only going to get better. And I'm excited. Alan is excited. Like I said, for the next 2 months, it is going to be off the hook for us. And I'm going to tell you why. Next week, he hasn't called me yet, but I think we'll hear something tomorrow. We're going to start the process of the DNA next week. Okay, people, you know what that means? The DNA that we got off the windows, we're going to start it next week. And I've been waiting for this for a long time. So has Alan, so has everybody else, Jimmy. We have probably the 2 biggest people on DNA in the United States are going to be assisting us in getting this thing tested and to try to figure out what was left on the windows of my truck. We all know what it is. I know what it is. Alan knows what it is. Jimmy knows what it is. But we need confirmation. And I think these guys are going to be able to do it for us. When that happens, I think it's going to be world news. It's going to be all over for us. I mean, it's going to be all over for us. There's going to be things happening now that I would have only dreamed of, and it's going to get crazy. And we're going to be moving all up like the Jeffersons.
It's actually been like a wild ride.
Yeah, it has.
And it feels like, it can't get any better. You know what I memean? You're like, man, it just can't get any better. And then it gets better.
It gets better. I mean, like the UFO on Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like this. Every week something happens, and it's like it puts us on the map again, and then we move up another step, and move up another step, and we're constantly moving up. And we have never fallen down.
Nope.
We have never fallen down.
And we haven't really been trying to move up. We just do our thing.
We do our thing.
Just having fun and just keep on.
That's what it's all about, is having fun. And Alan taught me that. He goes, you know what? If you're not getting paid, but if you're having fun, then do it. And keep on doing it the right way, and something eventually will happen. I didn't think that, I was going to be at this particular place today. I had no clue I would have my own show on the internet, a dime a dozen shows, granted. But you know what? I the way we, give you the show, it's in a professional way that, try to compare us with other stuff you see on the internet right now. No way. Okay, there's no way. You can't. Somebody made a comment on the internet and when they said, you mean, because, when I got our first sponsor, some guy said, you mean you've been doing this on your own? And I said, yes. I've been doing this. I work for AT&T. I'm a telephone technician. I've been doing it for 25 years, telephone work. So I have a great job. But when I put my heart and soul into something, this is what you get. Facebook, the wall, that's what you get. Okay? I know I was brought up, my dad taught me that if you're going to do something, you do it right. Simple as that. Okay, you do it right. And that's what I've been doing. And that's where we're at right now. And people are taking notice of what I've been doing. And it's just been nonstop. I'm having a blast. No doubt about it. I'm a kid in a candy store. Alan's the same way. Jimmy's the same way. All of our friends out there, you have Ito, you have Danny Valderrama, all those guys love to be here every Sunday. They have a freaking blast because, we try to bring you into our family, and this is what it is. We're a close family here. And it's, I'm just having a blast. I'm having a blast doing this because since I was a kid, I love this stuff. I mean, In Search of, Kolchak the Night Stalker. I was even telling Alan and Jimmy, do you guys remember that show called The Psi Factor? P-S-I Factor? Do you guys remember that? Those guys wore like suits, had, earpieces, and they had like a diesel truck with their station in. You know what I'm saying? I remember that show. It was like in the early 90s, and I used to watch it all the time. And then the show of all shows, The X-Files. And I know Ito right now is going, yay! I am the biggest fan of X-Files that you will ever know. I have just about everything the X-Files ever put out. Okay, everything. I even have the I Believe poster that Mulder had in his office. I have the actual original poster with the Fox signet on it. And I have everybody's autograph on there. From Chris Carter to the Smoking Man to all the Lone Gunmen. I have everybody's autograph on there that I personally got myself, and it's hanging in my club. That's how big of a fan I am. Okay.
And Ito, he does have the dolls.
What?
The 2 dolls. You have the dolls.
The Barbie dolls? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I got the Barbie dolls. I got the lunch pail. I got all the watches. I got the pins. I got all the badges. I got all of the figurines. I got every single one still in the packages. I got autographed pictures of Mulder and Scully on all my windows. On my wall. I have probably every single magazine. I got all the comic books. I got all of the bubblegum cards. I got every single one. Oh, God. I got their special edition stuff. You know, I've got it all.
Yeah.
I have it all.
And all their signatures.
I've got it all, guys. I mean, that's how big of an X-Files freak. When the National Geographic came here to film inside the studio, I showed them the club, and the guys were going, whoa, you like the X-Files? Oh, I even have the X-Files pinball machine.
Yeah, he does.
I have the X-Files pinball machine.
And it works.
Yeah, and it's in my club. So that's how big of a freaking X-Files fan I am. I had the pinball machine from the X-Files, okay? So there you go. That proves that I am a serious dude when it comes to paranormal. You know, again, I've done a lot of research. I try to associate myself with the people who know their stuff in certain areas, like, you know, UFOs and Bigfoot. You know, Bigfoot. How did I become involved in Bigfoot? We have an investigator here by the name of David Ragosa, who lives in Fresno, who's been doing this a long time. Somebody put me in contact with him. I came associated with him. He invited me on a trip, and lo and behold, ever since then, it's been nonstop on Bigfoot. And then Alan comes aboard, and Jimmy comes aboard, and they're big-time Bigfoot freaks like me now. UFOs, how did I become associated in UFOs? I used to be a assistant director for MUFON for about 2 years, 2.5 years. I was an investigator for MUFON for the Central Valley. And for those who don't know what MUFON is, the Mutual UFO Network. I had to quit the MUFON though because this was taking too much time. And I had, you know, I was doing a lot of ghost investigating, Bigfoot investigating. I couldn't give all my heart and soul to MUFON, so I had to let them go. But, you know, and I appreciate MUFON giving me the opportunity to learn a lot about UFOs, and I did, and that's why I am so into the UFOs now and know how to investigate and talk to witnesses because of MUFON. You know, ghost hunting is a dime a dozen. You know, I have all the toys that you see on TV. I've got them all. I got video stuff that you don't even see on TV. I got motion detectors that you don't even see on frickin' Finding Bigfoot for, you know, Finding Bigfoot. I've got that. I have a degree in electronics. I was able to put stuff together. That's why I can do all this. Okay? Oh, wow. 2 minutes to 7 o'clock. Whew, I'm going to take a breath, guys. Because for the next 2 hours, we're going to scare the crap out of you. I'm going to take a drink of liquid nitro. But am I like psyched or what? I think this energy drink is working.
Oh, it's good. We've been taking shots over here on the side.
I love this stuff, guys. I'm just going to take a breath here. Because in a couple of minutes, we're going to call David. And we are going to talk about missing people. Now, let's talk a little bit before we get David on tonight. Okay, tonight's show is going to be one for the show. One show is for the record books. I can tell you that right now. I guarantee it. After tonight's show, everybody out there is going to go, whoa. And you're going to understand why. You're not going to be able to sleep well tonight. some of you are probably going to have nightmares. I guarantee it. I suggest right now that you get up and you go to the bathroom, go get 2 bathroom breaks right now. Go get your sodas, go get your alcoholic beverages, go get your food. Get it right now. Come back and sit down, because in about 2 or 3 minutes we're going to call David. Restroom break, go do it right now. Make sure you're comfortable, because you are not going to want to miss a single part of this interview. Granted, it's going to be archived, but you know what? It's better to hear it live the first time, because and you'll understand why in a little bit. We're going to have an intermission at 8 o'clock. We don't have commercials on here yet, but at 8 o'clock, we're going to take a 10-minute intermission for David to rest his voice, for him to go to the bathroom, get some water, do whatever he needs to do. And at that point in time, we're going to give 2 books away. Alan will be taking callers. We'll let you know when to call in, but that's going to be at intermission. Okay? Like I said, I've been waiting for this interview for a long time. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm just catching my breath here, folks, because like I said, as soon as we get him on here tonight, it's going to be nonstop.
Well, if everyone goes on to my Facebook page or Jeffrey's Facebook page, I actually Googled James Arthur.
Oh yeah.
He's in the Missing 411 book. That was the teacher I had in junior high, and I found it on Google, his picture and everything about him being missing. And you could go to my Facebook or Jeffrey's Facebook and you can look at that. It's pretty interesting. That guy is in the 411 book. Freaked me out. Now I'm really freaked out. I mean, I already was freaked out about going to the mountains after seeing a Sasquatch. Now I'm really freaked out because down the road from where I saw Sasquatch, that guy disappeared.
Did you know how many people go missing per day in the United States of America? 2,300 people go missing every day in the United States of America. I looked that up. That means 839,500 people go missing. Granted, a lot of those are people that they recover. A lot of those they find deceased. A lot of those they never find, ever. David Paulides is a retired lawman for about 20 years. He has a couple of degrees out of San Francisco. He is also the co-founder of a Bigfoot organization called the North American Bigfoot Search. And what happened one day is I'm going to let him talk to you basically about that. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call Mr. David up. And I think it's time to pretty much go with this. So you guys ready out there? You guys are like set, ready to go? Wait.
Yeah, the camping season's about to start. Joe is telling me he's ready.
David, this is Jeffrey with Sanger Paranormal SPS Radio. How you doing?
Pretty good, how are you?
I'm doing extremely well. Can you hear me good?
Absolutely.
All right. For one thing, I want to say thank you for doing this for us. I am a big fan of your books. I have, it's like I've been bugging you for a long time to get you on here because I know what's going on, and your books are pretty much proving it for everybody. So I pretty much gave everybody a description of your background. You're 20 years lawman, a couple of degrees. Where did you get your degrees at? In San Francisco?
Yep.
Right on. And I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but the North American Bigfoot Search. Is that all right?
Yeah, and if we're going to talk about missing people, let's kind of steer clear of that.
Sweet. Okay, we'll do that. Sounds good. All right. So what in the heck made you look into missing people, especially in our national parks?
You want me to talk about that on the air?
Yeah, let's go for it. We're on the air right now.
Oh, we are. Well, what happened was is that I was at a national park doing some other things, and I was talking to people that were non-park employees. They were concessionaires. Some park employees started watching, started listening, and one thing led to another, and I started talking to them a little bit. And I kind of asked a little about my background. They're friendly people. And I went back to my hotel, which was off the national park. And later that night, I get a knock on the door, and a guy in plain clothes says, "Hey, Dave, I was one of the national park people that you saw out there today, and we looked into your background. We think you'd be the right person to give this information to." And they started to talk about the different parks they'd worked at and the number of disappearances at these different parks. And the unusual part about it was that they said that there wasn't much follow-up done about it. Initially, when the people went missing, there was a lot of press and a lot of media, and then it quickly dwindled away. And they were talking, and they said, it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem as though they should have that level of disappearances, and there were few facts associated with the disappearance, and they knew that the national park wasn't doing anything trying to track it and understand it, etc. And they said, we think somebody needs to take a hard look at it. And that was almost 4 years ago now.
Wow. So you have been researching basically for 3 years, 7,000 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're pushing 4 years now.
Wow. So now, when the forest ranger, I don't know if you want to let people know, where were you at when what area were you at when you started doing your first research on this?
I never said where I was.
Oh, okay.
Out of protection for the people.
Got it. Okay, so you started looking into reports. Now, how did you get all these reports? Through the Freedom of Information Act, is that correct?
Well, you have to dig pretty hard. You have to know how to work the internet, and there's some sources that you can go to and how to tweak it to get the information you want. And after hours and hours and hours, you finally come across some that start to look suspicious and some that don't make sense. And then once you have some names and some dates, then you can start digging further. But at the beginning, what we did was we Freedom of Information Act sent requests to the National Park Service, and we wanted to get a list of missing people inside their system. And people got to understand that the National Park Service has a very large, federally trained law enforcement group that patrol national parks. And these guys are as well equipped as any municipality. They're probably trained better than most municipalities because they go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They're highly organized. They're the kind of group you'd want, that you would think would be a good hold of this information. So we sent the Freedom of Information Act request, first asking for a list of missing people from Yosemite. And we got a response back that they didn't keep lists of missing people from Yosemite.
They didn't keep lists. Now, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, does that sound right to a law enforcement officer? Does that make sense to you?
So I actually sat down with a couple of guys that are heads of major law enforcement institutions, and I sent this to them, and we called, and I said, does this make sense? And they said, well, it must be semantics. It must be some way you worded that request that they didn't understand it. So I wrote an entirely different one with entirely different language, but with the same request. And I get a call back from the head of the Freedom of Information Department for the Western U.S. out of Denver, and she tells me, no, Dave, we understood the request. We don't have any lists of missing people. I says, okay, so let me get this. You have 20 people a year maybe go missing, maybe 30 in Yosemite that you start searches on, and some of those people never come out and they're never found, and there's no log of these people missing and where they were last seen. And she says, oh, we don't have the funds for that. That costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and So I said, whoa. You can keep a list of missing people on a clipboard and some graph paper. You write their names down, where they were last seen, the date, and it's just, you add to it as the year goes on. And when you're looking for a location where people have gone missing, you just look back through the list. It's not complicated stuff. It's not rocket science. Then all of a sudden, everyone stopped talking. So I said, so if I want a list from Yosemite, how am I going to get it? And they said, well, let me ask the National Park Service in Yosemite what they say. So they came back and they said it cost in excess of $34,000 for them to develop a list.
What? Okay, now, are they just saying that because they don't want to give you the list, or was that actual numbers? I mean, an actual amount?
Well, it's even more unusual than that. Because I had books published by a publisher, I wasn't self-published, and I'd sold books before, I asked for an exemption under a clause that says if you're a published author, you can ask for an exemption from the cost. So they dilly-dallied and waited. Finally, I get a response from an attorney inside the National Park Service. And their response was that my books aren't in enough libraries for it to qualify as an exemption. And we had some guys that are attorneys and did some research into FOIA, and there's no such criteria.
They don't. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So they're like beating around the bush. They don't want to give you any information. Period. It looks like.
Well, as far as lists, they're going to make us, run the marathon to find out.
Right.
That's okay. I mean, we did our homework and we came out with a list that I know we're missing a lot of people, but at least it's a list.
Right.
And so to make things obscenely weird, we says, well, if it's 34,000 from Yosemite, you have 383 locations across the United States. How much would it be for a list for all of the locations that you have? And they said it'd be 1.4 million. 1.4 million for the National Park Service to do their own job.
Wow. Okay, that's just not right. Okay, well, so that's a big time roadblock for you right there. So what type of information did you get, or were you able to get, if any?
So many times on cases where we knew people were missing, we'd send a Freedom of Information Act request. And a lot of times they'd say they wouldn't have the case. Many times they said they lost the case. But every once in a while, we'd get the case. And there's a case out of Yosemite that disturbs us greatly. And it disturbs us greatly because this girl, a 14-year-old girl, was with her dad, and they took a backpacking trip on horseback from Tenaya Lakes, and they rode into an area called Sunrise High Sierra Camps. And this girl's name is Stacy Harris. Stacy was 14, and she disappeared July 17, 1981. And there were 6 other people in this group when they rode into this High Sierra Camps, and in these areas they have cabins way back in the middle of nowhere where they ride the horses in, the ranch hand takes care of the horses, they go into the cabins, they change, they spend the night in there. Stacy comes out and tells her dad that she's going to walk over to this granite point 150 yards away with this 71-year-old man who's with the group. Everybody sees Stacy and this man walk to the point, and they're at about 9,000 feet. And this older man sits down, everyone sees him sits down, and Stacy tells the man that she's going to walk down the hill to a lake that's maybe 200 yards away from where they were sitting. And she had her camera with her, and she was going to take some pictures. And the man says, okay. Well, the man never leaves his position and says, I'm too tired to walk with you, but go ahead. So the man watches her walk down the granite area into a wooded area surrounding the lake. That's the last time anyone ever saw Stacy. And the subsequent search found her lens capped to her camera on the trail in the forested area by the lake. That's the last thing they ever found of her. And a 2-week search never found anything else. And she's never been found since. So this is a case that we sent a Freedom of Information Act request to park officials. And this was probably our 15th, 16th request. And previous to that, we had gotten about 12 or 13 back with the cases of these missing people that were still active. And this special agent, and that's what they call a detective in the Park Service, the special agent calls me and says, Dave, why do you want this case? Which
is an inappropriate question in the Freedom of Information Act, because why a citizen wants a case is irrelevant behind why the Park Service or any other governmental agency gives you the case. In fact, they can't ask the question according to FOIA. So he asked it, and I said, well, we're doing research on missing people. And he goes, yeah, but why do you really want it? I said, do you realize that's an irrelevant question that you're not supposed to be asking? He goes, I can ask anything I want. He goes, well, why do you want this one? He goes, you know that active cases in the Park Service, you're not going to get any of them. This guy, his name is Yu, Y-U, Special Agent Yu. I said, Agent Yu, do you realize that I have over 12 active cases that have been given to me by the Park Service? And he says, no, you don't. I said, no, I do. He says, no, you don't. I said, no, why would I lie to you? All you have to do is call the Western Regional Office and find out. And it was a very antagonistic phone call, which I've never had between a federal law enforcement officer and myself like this. And the final thing was on the phone is he said, you'll never get this case.
Wow.
Now, he's right up to this point. I've appealed it twice. I've gone to our congressman, and they said that the Park Service won't give it up.
Wow. Did they actually send out a search for this girl? I mean, when she disappeared, I mean, I'm sure that, the search was set out for her. I mean, so obviously there's got to be reports in there someplace.
Oh, there was an extensive search. And in fact, one of Stacy's uncles contacted me. He heard about the book, he read the book, and then he called and he said, Dave, I was actually one of the relatives that drove up there and assisted on the front end of that search. And he said, all the facts you stated there are correct. And he goes, but I don't understand why the Park Service isn't giving you the report. I said, I don't understand either. And I said, maybe if you go up there and state that you're a relative and you want to see it, maybe they'll let you see it. He says, you know what, I think I'm going to try. And that was a few weeks ago. I haven't heard what happened since. But I find it suspect on an open missing persons case that they won't let you see it. Just so people understand, missing persons cases are one of the strangest cases that law enforcement research and work because it's not a crime. There's no crime in being a missing person. They can't arrest you for being a missing person, and it's not handled under the criminal elements of investigation. It's handled differently. So there's no crime report per se. There's a missing person report. And I asked you, I said, are there any suspects in this case? No. Have you had any suspects? No. I said, have you had any ongoing investigations since the 80s? No. So it makes you ask, why won't they release this?
Well, apparently they know something and they want to keep it hidden. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Wow. And that's right in our backyard here. When I read your book, you listed a number of locations that were very high in missing persons. Yosemite National Park is way up there, isn't it?
It's the number one place in the nation.
Holy crap. Did everybody hear that? All of our people out there who are listening, Yosemite National Park is the number one location in the United States National Park that people go missing. No, that really is scary. I got goosebumps. I'm sorry, but I do. David, I lived here in Fresno all my life. You live in San Jose, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We watch the news religiously every day, and my wife and I do that at 6 o'clock every day. And we hear the news when they come on. I don't care if it's NBC, CBS, or ABC. They will let us know when a missing person goes missing in Yosemite, and that's where it happened, Yosemite. My wife and I, one summer, I remember, we talked and I yelled at her. I go, "Are these people stupid? How hard it is to get lost in a location where there are like hundreds and hundreds of people," and it just didn't make it. I mean, I hiker after hiker after camper, they were just going missing like crazy every summer. It was ridiculous. And when I read your book, I'm going, well, there's something definitely going on here. There are a lot of weird cases that you have in your book. I would love to go through the ones that are representative of Yosemite area and the Sierra side. There's even an incident that you have in your book that our producer is tied to, and I mentioned to that in your book. But if you can, why don't you pick out some of the weirdest incidents that occurred just east of us here at Fresno, and tell us about them and what you ran into.
So first, for the people that don't understand, there's been a lot of conjecture on the web about people who have never read these two books and are just making assumptions, and I'm talking really broad assumptions. Oh, people disappear all the time, people get lost, mom and pa cattle out on a trail and they get tired and they just disappear. That isn't what I write about. These are highly, highly unusual. These aren't attacks by mountain lions. These aren't attacks by bears. If someone's attacked by a mountain lion and you're an adult, you're going to fight for your life. There's going to be blood everywhere. There's going to be hair. There's going to be a scene there that's obvious to any investigator. Well, what happened? This isn't what I'm writing about. These are something that just do not make sense at all. I'll start off with an incident that occurred in 1995 in July. A woman named Jean Hesselschwert, and she was from the East Coast, and she was traveling with her fiance. And in July, they drove up. They came from Nevada. They drove through the park, and they ended up on Glacier Point. And they arrived there around 11 o'clock in the morning. They pulled into the parking lot, and they both kind of had road-tired bodies, and they wanted to walk around a little bit. And they started to walk around, and she goes, "Hey, I'm going to walk over here to this area and look." And he goes, "Okay, I'm going to just walk over here." And make a long story short, with about 5-10 minutes, the fiancé realizes that Jean isn't around anymore. And it happened pretty quick. And he looked around, screamed, couldn't find her. He runs back down to the parking lot, and he finds a guy who's emptying garbage cans from the Park Service and says, "Hey, I need help. This is really weird, but I can't find my girlfriend." So the guy calls for help, and within a matter of an hour, the place is swarming with Park Service employees, searchers. Within 2 hours, there's a helicopter over the scene. And within 2 days, there's over 300 people searching for her.
Wow.
And I don't know if anyone's ever been to Glacier Point. There's only a few ways to get out of there without killing yourself. And it's a very scenic location. Make a long story short, they search for her for 2.5 weeks, and they don't find anything. And I mean nothing. And fast forward to September 3rd of 1995, about 2 months later, two guys that are mountain climber types climb their way into the back of Bridal Veil Falls, which is on the same side of the park as you drive in. It's on the southern side. And they're way back into the area there, and they're trout fishing. And they come into a pool, and they see a body in the pool of water. And it was Jean. She was long dead. And the point of that, and the unusual nature of this, is that I invite everybody to go to a Google map. And I want you to look at the area between Glacier Point and the backside of Bridal Veil Falls. And you will see that is some of the most rugged, highest peaked granite area anywhere in the park. It's about 3 to 4 miles as the crow flies. It's probably 10 miles walking. And what the mountain climbers stated is that there's no way anybody could have gotten into that area without being an advanced climber, because it was so rough and rugged. The Park Service had to bring in a helicopter to remove the body. The FBI was on this case from the beginning, because at the very beginning they thought that the fiancé was the suspect.
Sure.
He had nothing to do with it. And the real question in everyone's mind is, how in the heck did she get there? Never answered. Park Service never wanted to talk about it. Who knows how she got there? I have no idea. But
wow,
that was a weird one.
Wow. people that go missing in Yosemite, what are the age range? The ages? Are there like more in the middle teens, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, or is it a wide from 3-year-olds all the way to 60 in Yosemite?
Yosemite is kind of a strange place because you have kids all the way from 2 years old all the way to the elderly. And when I classified Yosemite in the book, I'm not classifying it just as the absolute boundaries of the park, because that's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, when I wrote the book, I put disappearances in North America because I don't think the issue stopped at the United States border. It actually went way into Canada, and there are clusters of missing in Canada that match the criteria for the United States. So when you look at a map of Yosemite, the concentration of the missing are in the Yosemite National Park boundaries, but then scattered around the perimeter are other missing people that match the criteria for the entire book. And it's strange because the circumstances of their disappearance don't make a lot of sense. As an example, the friend of your producers, James Arthur, he was an older man, military commander. He decided to go fishing up at Iron Lakes Reservoir. And keep this in the back of your mind, at the time of his disappearance, he was wearing an orange shirt. And in the book, I write about how bright colors seem to be associated with people who disappear.
Really?
And I don't have an answer why, but an abnormal amount of people are wearing bright colors when they vanish. And that's contrary to what you may think should be occurring.
Right. I mean
if Mr. Arthur was wearing a bright colored orange shirt, it should be easier to find, right?
Absolutely.
Isn't everyone told to wear orange? Especially hunting?
I mean, yeah, and, when people go up, especially like hunters, and, so people know where you're located, they want you to wear bright clothes, so that way especially if you get lost, they can find you a lot quicker.
Exactly. So Mr. Arthur, he was fishing, and so a fishing pole is a fairly large item. An orange shirt is a fairly bright item. And he wasn't a small man. He was a larger man who just went for the day fishing. He didn't have any mental problems. He didn't want to kill himself, etc., etc. Well, it's not unusual for someone to go up and maybe they don't find him on the first pass. But after 2 or 3 weeks of being in the wilderness, your body gets pretty ripe. And when they bring in cadaver dogs, that's usually the time that they're going to find the body. Because you and I aren't going to pass within 100 yards down air from that, and we're going to smell it.
Right.
And Arthur was never found. And that in itself is an unusual thing when you think about people who disappear in a specific area where his car was found and where he was supposed to be fishing.
He was trained in survival.
Yeah, James Arthur was part of the 144th Fighter Wing. He was in the National Guard. He was trained, if, let's say, for example, if he was being abducted by, 2 or 3 guys or whatever, he would probably be able to fight them off. So this guy was probably well in the know-how of how to protect himself in case there was anything, a deadly force upon him. So for somebody like that to go missing, who probably knows this area like the back of his hand, doesn't make sense.
Agree 100%.
Well, we flew search and rescue missions over the Sierras. He knew the Sierras well.
Can you hear Ellen at all, David?
Just real vaguely.
Real vaguely? Okay. So Alan was just telling me that he used to, James was his junior high teacher. And Alan was also a pilot. James was a pilot, and he took Alan up in his airplane. And they used to fly over the mountains all the time. So that gives you a perspective of his knowledge of the area. So how could somebody like that, with all that knowledge of the mountain range where, how could somebody like that go missing?
Well, he had like survival skills. Like if you crash, he could live on the land with a broken leg. You know what I mean? I mean, he was
Right.
taught all that stuff.
So he was a survivalist. So obviously he knew how to live off the land in case he got lost. But you cannot find his body. That's just unbelievable.
I didn't even know he was missing until I read your
Yeah.
book. I
Yeah.
freaked out. That freaked me out.
Alan read your book and saw James Arthur out there and said, "Oh my God, I know him." So that's why we wanted you on here, man. Because like I said, we know there are things very, very weird going on up here in the mountains, and people need to hear about this. Now, okay, that's James Arthur is another case. What other weird cases do you have? Now, not necessarily in Yosemite, but like you said, the outer areas.
Well, we can stay right in the middle of Yosemite. And one thing about the book that will become pretty clear to people is that each one of the areas, the clusters, the 28 clusters in North America that we identify, there's historical significance to the area. Now with Yosemite, it used to be the Miwok Indians lived in there, and they established that zone, so there's a Native American presence. And in many of the clusters, there was a Native American presence right in the middle of the cluster where these disappearances were occurring. And in Yosemite, we can track disappearances of very, very strange nature going back many, many years. Now, to me, one of the strangest and more common than not, you're going to find that sometimes when someone disappears, sometimes two disappear. And it's not unusual to have one person disappear and not being found, but to find two people that both aren't found, it's sort of an unusual event. And in July of 1954, a guy named Walter Gordon, he was 26 years old, and he was a grad student at UC Berkeley, and he took some summer employment to work down in Yosemite. Well, on the morning of the 20th, he told his friends that he was going to hike to Glacier Point and be back. Well, Glacier Point is where Gene Hesselschwartz was at, that disappeared and was later found behind Bridalveil Falls. Well, Gordon went up there. He was never found. So his parents came out, and they spent a month at the park. And they were pressing people, and they said, "Hey, my son's not going to run away. He's not going to go away. He's a smart kid. He's got, 8, 9 years of advanced hiking and mountaineering. The guy is just not going to disappear. Come on." And especially with the efforts that were put forth, you guys would find him, come on, And the Park Service did a good search for him, but they didn't want to listen to what the parents were saying. Fast forward 3 months to October of 1954, and a 30-year-old UC Berkeley grad student named Orver von Loss came for the weekend with his wife and his parents, and were staying at the Ahwahnee Hotel. And he and his wife took a hike a short hike, up into the 200-300 yards up into the side of the mountain, just looking around. The wife said, "Hey, I got to go back to the hotel." He goes, "I'll just hike around a little bit more. I'll be right back." He disappeared and was never found. So Mr. and Mrs. Von Loss started pushing the government pretty hard. And I should say that none of this information I'm telling you came from the Park Service, because they don't keep these kind of records this long, they claim. And they don't know anything about these things, they claim. This was all done through extraordinary amount of hand-searching, archival newspaper articles. And Von Loss's family got upset because they didn't feel like the government was trying hard enough to find Von Loss. When you look at it in hindsight, maybe they know something we don't know, and they busted their home looking for Walter Gordon 3 months earlier, and maybe they know in certain cases no one's going to be found. I don't know. But the parents got upset, and then by a fluke, they heard about this boy or this young man that disappeared in July. So they tracked the parents down of Walter Gordon, and now both families bind themselves together, and they want to force the government to do something. And they talk about the similarities between their boys and their attitude. They would never disappear, and this is BS, blah, blah, blah. They write a letter to President Eisenhower telling him that they want special forces troops to come in and look for their kids because there's no way that they voluntarily disappeared and that they felt they were abducted. Needless to say, Eisenhower didn't recognize the letter. If he wrote something, it was never notified in the paper, and the parents never publicly talked about it, but there was never any more searching done.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's, people are listening right now, and they cannot believe what they're hearing. I mean, thousands and thousands of people go up every year to Yosemite, what's supposed to be a friendly location for families, and not knowing this information, I think is not right, because, by talking about this, I think we're going to save somebody's life in the future. And that's why I want you to give a lot of examples, if you can, especially in the Yosemite area. Now, we've talked about so far elderly, older, mids, children. Have any children gone missing in the Yosemite area or the outskirts?
So just on the east side, on the east perimeter of Yosemite, is a place called Mono Village, Mono Lake area, out in that area. But it's on the southeastern perimeter of the park. And in this Mono Village area, it's really nice. It's around a lake. In July 13th of 1957, the Scott family was vacationing there, and the kids and the family are just kind of running around in the valley floor like most kids do. And all of a sudden they realize that their son David, 2 years old, has disappeared. So, in my law enforcement mind, if my son, 2 years old, disappears, and we search for him for an hour, and I can't find him within 100 yards of my place, I think he's been abducted. I mean, that's what I'm going to be thinking. And I think that's what this family was thinking right away. So they call Mono County Sheriffs, they respond, U.S. Forest Service responds, and pretty soon there's this massive search going on. And 2-3 days go by, and their dogs aren't tracking the way they should be tracking. Very odd. And if you look at this place on a map, it would appear as though it sits in a bowl. It's almost like a volcanic bowl with very steep mountains around every side. And on the northern side is a very steep mountain without hardly any brush or vegetation on it that goes up 3,000 feet, peaks out, goes down the other side, and then comes up on another peak on the other side. And one of the dog handlers is with this dog, and this dog starts walking up this trail, on this really steep trail on this peak, right on the side of the lake, right next to where David disappeared. And they start in the late afternoon. They get up about 2,000 feet on the side of this peak, and darkness hits, and they come back down. The handler says, I can't believe it. This makes no sense. We're standing there at 2,000 feet. We're looking down at the trailer, at the lake, at the place where he disappeared. Why the kid would be walking almost straight up this mountain is beyond anyone's understanding, because he could see where his parents are. So anyhow, the next morning they wake up, they go track back up, and they track over the top of this peak, and they bring in some special armed forces guys and National Guard people. And they start searching this valley and back up the other side of the peak behind it. And at about 3,300 feet higher than the lake, one of these soldiers comes around a large boulder, and they find the boy laying down, and he's essentially wearing, I don't think he's wearing anything, any of the clothes he had. I think almost all of them are gone, and he finds the boy deceased. And there's no notation about the boy's condition of his feet, but a reporter did ask him if there were any obvious signs of trauma. And the soldier made an interesting statement in that he goes, I'm not the expert on that, you have to ask others. Which, if you're the soldier and you're looking at the body and there's no obvious signs of trauma, I don't see any danger in saying there were no obvious signs, but he didn't make any statements. And there were no statements in any of the reports about the condition of this boy's body, other than the law enforcement officials at the scene said they found it phenomenal that the boy could climb that high. Yeah, at 2 years old, I think so.
Um, if they found the boy deceased, then obviously he had a burial. His parents were able to bury him. Would the parents, would they be able to actually see the body? I mean, were they? I mean, you know what I'm getting at? I mean, if there was something to the boy's body that they didn't want to talk about, would the parents actually been able to see the body?
Good question.
Wow.
I don't know. This occurred in 1957. There's
No, I mean,
high probability everyone associated is deceased now.
wow.
It seemed like on all the people went uphill.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they were little kids and they were hiking like 3,000 more feet up. And then the other thing was their clothes were not eaten. If a bear or something gets them, they'll eat the clothes and all that stuff. That was the weirdest thing.
Well, so far you've talked about missing people that have never been found. So far, this little boy was found but deceased. Now, do you have any other ones where they found the remains of a certain person?
Well, they have found remains of people, and I should say that your producer, they hit on a pretty key note right there, and that is that one of the findings in the book about almost all of these people is that the absence of clothing when they're found versus when they left is a pretty unusual mark. And this doesn't only occur in cold weather or in warm weather. It happens in the most unusual circumstances you can find. And I'm not talking about people that had hypothermia and they start shredding clothing like some theories say. I'm talking about people that walk away from a certain location and within 50 yards they're stripped and their clothes are gone. And the unusual part about that is in almost every instance their clothes aren't found, which when searchers break an area into a quadrant, they're told that they got to search that whole quadrant. So you would think that the clothes would be found, but they're not found in almost every instance. So that's a strange part of this anomaly. The other part of it is that there's a couple incidents that I write about that actually occurred in national parks. One occurred in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Another one occurred in Crater Lake National Park, and that is in Crater Lake, a 19-year-old kid went out during the middle of winter to photograph Crater Lake in the winter. And while he was there, he disappeared. I'm talking about 20-foot drifts of snow, really the middle of winter. It occurred in February. And his dad came out from the East Coast and searched for him. And his dad is another guy that made a big stink and said, hey, I don't think you guys are understand this, but my son was a great kid. He's smart. He's not going to disappear. He's not going to walk into the middle of the wilderness in the winter. He's responsible. He's intelligent. And he's another guy that pushed the Park Service and his Congress and senator to get more resources to look for his son. Never happened. So fast forward 7 months, and a person was in the middle of the wilderness, 12 miles from where, this guy's name was Charles McCullough, 12 miles from where Charles disappeared. And they were in a box valley. A small creek went in, small creek came out. And they're walking through it, and they see what they thought was a skeleton. And they found a backpack on the hillside, a small backpack, not a big one, just like a day pack you'd carry. They carry the day pack out, and they bring it up to the rangers, and they lay it on a table. And one of the rangers understood from a description of Charles's father that this was Charles's backpack. So the ranger gets another guy, and they get on horseback, and they ride into the wilderness to this location. So I made a Freedom of Information Act request for this case, by the way, and the Park Service lost it. And they said that they lost 12 years of cases in that certain time frame in Crater Lake. Now, the reason I found out what I'm going to tell you is that I dug up and I found the ranger that actually went back into this scene. Otherwise, you'd never even know about this. The ranger's name was Marion, and Marion was an absolutely phenomenal guy. He is. He was a science teacher for 30 years in Medford, and then every summer he'd bring his family up to Crater Lake, and he'd be one of the sworn law enforcement officers for Crater Lake. He went to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, so that was his summer employment. Him and another guy ride back into this Fox Creek area, and they walk in, and there's a giant Douglas fir tree that's kind of blocking the creek. The creek flows under it. They step over the other side, and he says, Dave, if you were standing up and you undid your pants, dropped your zipper, and you pushed your pants all the way to the ground, that's kind of what I saw when I stepped on the other side of the Douglas fir tree. The belt buckle was undone, the pants were undone, and they were pushed to the ground. And on the right leg, there was one broken tibia bone, that's your shin bone. And there were socks at the bottom of the pants where there were small bones. But there was no fibula, there were no large bones, there were no hip bones, there were no shoulder, there was no vertebrae. And on the other side of this log, they found a real small piece of the skull, and there were millions of little chips of bones everywhere. The belt buckle was undone. The belt buckle and the pants were intact. There were no tears. Marion says, Dave, I'm a trained law enforcement guy. Something's wrong with this scene. So they said that they put some tape around it. They got back on their horse. They went back in, and they requested an FBI evidence response team from Portland to come back and work that scene. And they flew in the next day by helicopter, and they worked that scene for 4 days. And Marion said, Dave, I don't know what happened there, but it wasn't right. And he said, that kid disappeared with 20-foot drifts of snow everywhere. How he got into that location in the wilderness, we will never know. But he says, I've been on hundreds of body scenes everywhere in this wilderness, never seen anything like that, and I don't know what happened.
Okay, so I got this visual in my head where these genes are like an invisible person is sort of kind of sitting there or standing there with these genes on the floor, on the ground, like there's an invisible person in it. That's what I'm looking at right now in my head. And now you're saying there are bones inside these genes, like the person was evaporated, or if this person was, let's say for example, eaten by an animal, those genes would not be intact, period. They would have been ripped up, torn apart. How can a pair of genes be in that type of position? I don't understand that.
So let's fast forward. There's a case in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park where a Boy Scout was backpacking with his troop through the middle of the park on the Appalachian Trail. And they're packing their way along the trail back towards the parking lot. This kid's the last kid in line. Somehow or another, he doesn't show up at the parking lot and he disappears. They do a massive search for this kid, and this is in winter. It's really cold, and right after this kid disappears, it starts snowing heavy. There's a weird side note to many of these stories is right after the person disappears, the weather turns bad. So this kid was 15, and they searched for him for 5 days. And one of the canines, or two of the canine dogs, supposedly tracked a scent to the highway, and they thought he picked up a car and went home. And I think they kind of backed off on how heavy the search was at that point. They thought he wasn't in the park. But some special, this is a weird side note to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. In the disappearances from that park, they use Green Berets many of the times. And what I tell people is the Green Berets are different than National Guard people. The National Guard people come from our community. So you call the National Guard into the hills above Fresno. They're people from Fresno and Hanford and from that community.
Absolutely.
Green Berets come in, they're not from the community. They're from all over North America. And these Green Beret guys have security clearances, and they know to keep their mouth shut. Well, they bring in the Green Beret into the Great Smoky Mountains, and they search. The Green Beret find this kid in a creek bed several miles off from where he should be, down in a deep ravine. And the way they found him is that they're walking along this creek. Sorry, it's a river. And in the middle of the river, they see something that they can't believe. This is the middle of winter, snow everywhere. In the middle of the river is his backpack that he was wearing, along with stacks of everything in the backpack on a boulder. So they searched for another day and a half before they found him further upstream with his back to a tree, his boots off, his pants pulled down to his knees, and his coat off and his mittens off.
Okay. No, he was dead, right? I mean, he was deceased.
He was frozen. He died of exposure.
Okay. Okay. I'm thinking for an animal, no. A human being, why would a human being do this in the middle of winter up in snow? Okay, I'm trying to debunk, and I noticed in your book, the title Missing 411. Nowhere on this book you give your opinion on what happened to these people. And I believe that the information, the facts, the evidence that you give people in these books, that they will be able to decide on their own what happened to these people. Because, there can only be a couple of theories on what happened. Abduction by a human being, or abduction by an animal, and that's it. Well, we're not going to talk about. I don't think we're going to go that high as far as being paranormal, but and that's it. And I noticed that there was a reason why you didn't want to specify how these people went missing, because the reports pretty much give exactly what people need. And as a police officer, retired police officer, people need to make up their own minds on this. And, I personally, being in the paranormal, world that I am in, I can already think of a couple of possibilities, but I'm not going to say what I think it is, because I'm going to let people make up their own minds. And this is, it's still going to get weirder. There are still other cases in these books that are going to blow people away. And I want you to continue on. As a matter of fact, if you can, you know what? It's 7:53. We're going to take a break, David. And what we're going to do is we're going to give away 2 of your books right now. We're going to take a 10-minute break. If you want, you can go ahead and, take it easy. Go get something to drink. Go to the bathroom if you have to. At about 8:10, if you can, come back. So I'm going to give you like 15 minutes. And then come back, and then we're going to continue on. Is that all right, David?
Sounds great.
All right, so I'll just leave the phone on. Don't hang up. Go do what you got to do, and then come back when you're ready, and we're going to go ahead and give away both books right now. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. Alan, here's the phone, Alan.
Are you guys ready?
Woo. Oh, man. Okay, does everybody have goosebumps?
Are you guys scared?
Well, you know what? Let me tell you something right now. I think David is leaving the best for last. There are still some more cases that he's going to get into that I'm going to have him talk to you about, and it is going to really scare the you-know-what out of you. This is actually happening right now in the national parks. He's talking about Yosemite right now, east of Fresno. Who has not ever been to Yosemite? You would have never thought this stuff is happening right in front of our eyes. The media is not telling you about this. The United States government is not telling you about this. And there's a reason, because something is not right here. And I have a couple of theories. I'm not going to say what my theories are right now on this show. Maybe next week we'll talk about it. But right now, I am going to let you continue thinking on how these people are going missing. How are they finding the bodies, and where they're finding these bodies? How did they get there? when they get there and find these bodies, how the bodies are as far as disrobed, it just doesn't make any sense. So, again, we're going to continue on with him, in about 12 minutes to 13 minutes on more cases that are really, really going to mess with your mind. And I'm going to tell him which cases. I'm pretty sure he's going to do those cases anyways, but if you think this is strange, it's going to get really, really even weird, way weirder than, we're going. So, okay, Alan, the first person, not the first person, we're going to go ahead and go with a number, the number of call anyways. And you'll get to choose from one book, either the East Coast or the West Coast. And you only get one book. Oh, go.
We're not going to let him choose. We're going to give away the East Coast book right now.
Okay. So
and it's going to be the East Coast book and caller number 17.
17 for the East Coast book. Right now, go for it. So there's number 1, I think, right? Okay.
Right, that was 1.
So go ahead. Oh, the number, I'm sorry, 559-287-8367. 559-287-8367. 559-287-8367. 559-287-8367. You get the East Coast book. And people are calling. He has the volume down right now, and they're going like crazy. People are calling. It's like off the hook right now.
We figured that everybody's going to want the West Coast one. So we're going to give away the East Coast one first.
There you go. The East Coast one first.
And you only can win one, okay?
You only want to win one book. So if you don't want to win this one, then better wait for the West Coast.
Okay, we're at caller 5. Keep on.
But, we have listeners in Europe. We have listeners in Guam.
17.
If you happen to win by just one of those luck of the draws, I'm going to send you the book to Guam or to frickin' wherever you're at in Europe.
We'll even send it to Robert Reed.
So, wherever you guys are at, we got fans that listen to this show all over the world, believe it or not. And I am flattered that you guys are listening, because that means we're doing something right here. And these books are an awesome read.
We're at caller number 7. Come on, guys. 10 more.
Okay, there you go.
Hit the redial now. Come on.
So,
it's the other redial button.
When I read the West Coast book, it totally changed my perspective in camping. Because you guys all know that I have a 5th-wheel trailer, and I have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old, and I have a 12-year-old, plus my wife and I. We go up to locations in the Sierra Nevadas where not that many people go to. And we do see campers and other trailers, but they're, 100, 200 yards from us. And, when we go hiking, I make sure my son is within 10, 15 feet. But you know what? From now on, he is not going to. I'm going to be holding on to him. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? I'm going to tie a rope onto him. I'm going to tie a rope onto my other son and my wife, and they're going to be tied onto me, because I do not want to have any one of my family disappear. And that's what's happening right now. There are people who are taking weekend trips, and they don't come back. That is sad and scary at the same time. And I don't want this to happen to you guys either.
Okay, we have a winner.
We have a winner.
Go ahead and answer it. Take their information.
So we have a winner, guys.
Who's our winner? Who? Ethan? Ito. Hey, buddy.
Ito, my God.
He's been wanting to win a book
so long. He had never won a book from us, has he?
No, and he was all worried today, man.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Right on, bro.
Congratulations, Ito. Ito has been with us. He's been a fan of this show since, no, I don't get it, since the first day we started the show, I don't know, 7, 8 months ago. And he has been a regular listener every Sunday. I'm happy he won because he is a big fan of this show. Awesome. And I know other people throughout the United States have been calling. It's just like he did luck of the draw, man. So that is very cool. Okay, now we're gonna do the West Coast.
Okay, here comes the West Coast, and this time we're gonna do it, since it's missing 411. We're gonna do it in number 11. Okay, number 11. This is the West Coast book.
Number 11.
Dial now.
559-287-8367. 287 UFOS. For the last four numbers, it spells UFOS. The West Coast edition, the one that has Yosemite in it, the one that has, oh my God,
James Arthur.
Huntington Lake, Dinky. Well, I mean, all those areas. What is it, Chute Peak? How do you pronounce that?
Shut Eye.
Shut Eye. There's a couple of them in Shut Eye in there. Bayshore Road, where James Arthur.
Ito, you can't call on this one, buddy. You already won.
Yeah, Ito, you cannot call anymore, buddy. That's it.
We got your number, man.
So the West Coast book is, oh man, I mean, like I said, and that's why we're sticking with Yosemite, because I want the people from the Fresno area to know what's exactly happening east of us. And we're talking freaking hour and a half drive from Fresno is Yosemite. Even a lot closer.
Five more, come on.
5 more, let's go, 5 more. God, I mean.
You wanted the number 2 pencil.
What?
Oh man, you're funny, brother. Ooh, we're getting close.
Getting closer. How many more? 3 more callers and you win the West Coast edition.
But no number 2 pencil.
Number 2 pencil. What the heck are you talking about, number 2 pencil?
we get free postage though. You don't got to pay a penny.
Next caller.
One more
caller. Here it is. Drum roll, please.
Winner, chicken dinner. I said winner, chicken dinner.
Ooh, Kelly wins.
Okay, we got your info.
Wow, very cool. Kelly.
Okay, we're going to hang up now. We know how to get a hold of you.
All right, we gave away 2 books. That's awesome, you guys.
On Jeff's cell phone.
And thank you for listening, and continue listening, because it is going to get better. Trust me. I mean, David has not, and there's still other cases that are really going to scare you really, really bad. And they're actually kind of sad, because there are some kids, 2, 3, 4-year-old kids that disappear right in front of their parents. Man, it's sad. I have a 6-year-old, and I don't know what I would do if my 6-year-old boy, if he was with me and all of a sudden disappears and I never see him again. So that just, no more callers, people. That's it. No more callers. They're still calling. We gave away the last book. Yeah, and it scares me to death, because I love my kid dearly, and I would hate to see even my wife, anybody that I know, go and just disappear like that. That doesn't make any sense. But now I will not. My whole attitude in camping has changed 180 degrees. Alan used to go up there by himself. Now, my wife told me that the places where these people are disappearing, her dad used to take her up there, and they would be fishing, and Cheryl, my wife, where she's probably 10 years old, 8 years old, would walk back to the site where they were camping all by herself on the trail, and all she would have on her around her neck is a freaking whistle. Okay?
That's what our parents gave us, a whistle.
A whistle, yeah. All right? But we're talking back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Back then, nobody worried about people getting abducted. Not like this. It's crazy. So
the books are given away. We're all done, man.
We're all done with the books.
We're done giving away the books.
Okay, David, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's continue on. All right. Now, since I've really scared everybody to death, I want you to scare them even more, because I don't want. I mean, like I said, the reason why I wanted you on here is because I don't want to see this happen anymore. Whatever it takes for a family to go up, I want them to come back. And, people need to know what exactly is happening and how people are going missing. because, like you said in a lot of these reports, the kids are not more than 6 feet, 5 feet from them when they go missing. That's scary. That scares me to death. Now let's continue on with the Yosemite area. Give us some more of your cases that are really, really far out there.
So I know there's still going to be those fringe people out there that say, oh, this is just a normal disappearance and things like this just happened. And so I'll put this in the words of the national park people, is that in 1943, a man named Emerson Holt was with a group of friends, and they were walking up at the far east end of the park, walking up along the Merced River, and that year was a really dry year, and the river was no more than 2 or 3 inches deep up at that eastern end as they were walking back towards the lake. And as they're walking, Emerson had some leg disabilities, and he had a lot of pain that day. And he told his friends, hey, you just take your time. I'm just going to enjoy the beauty of the park. And he sat down next to the Merced River and that trickle of water. And he said, hey, if you take an hour, don't worry. I'm just going to be right here when you come back. So friends only took, say, 25, 30 minutes. They come back, and Emerson wasn't there. And he didn't have the keys to the car. Other people did. And he had no way of leaving. And he was about a half mile in of about a 1.5 mile walk. And if you saw the area where he disappeared, it's pretty much, there's no heavy foliage around. It's pretty much open granite. There's one small creek with some little bit of foliage that comes down from the north. There isn't a lot. Anyhow, they searched for Emerson for a little over a week. And let me put this in the words of the park superintendent at the time was Frank Kitteridge. And the reporter asked him, how can you explain this man just disappearing? And in the words of Frank Kitteridge, it's almost supernatural what happened here.
Wow.
Frank was never found. And I'm sure his wife and his friends were just completely baffled where this man could go. So, moving on to a little bit of a different paradigm and bringing it up to the current date, and in fact, I'll keep it in this theme of national parks. But for the people who have never been to Crater Lake National Park up north, it's just north of Medford, it reminds you of a giant bowl, huge lake with absolutely pure water inside. There's only one place where you can go down to the water, and you can ride this boat during the summer that kind of gives you a tour of the lake. Other than that, it's absolutely a pristine environment. This location does have a history of disappearances, and in fact, the Modoc Indians viewed Crater Lake as a place that they wouldn't go because it was evil, and they didn't. And people wrote about it over the years, how it had this evil intent, blah, blah, blah. Well, fast forward to October 4th, 2006, just about 5 or 6 years ago. An 8-year-old boy named Samuel Belkey from Portland came down with his dad to have a father-son weekend at the park. And they were staying at a place called Diamond Lake just north of Crater Lake. And the two drove into the park. They drove to the park cafeteria and they had a lunch. And after lunch was over, they walked around and looked a little bit, and they got in their car. And during the summer, you can drive around a partial perimeter of Crater Lake. And they were driving on the eastern perimeter of the lake, and Mr. Belkey pulled into the turnout, and he got out of the car, and the turnout was on the opposite side of the lake as the lake itself. So he gets out of the car, and Sammy gets out of the car, and he runs up to a small mound of dirt on the backside of the parking lot, probably no more than 40 feet away from Mr. Belkey. Mr. Belkey says, hey, come on down, Sammy, let's go look at the lake. And Sammy goes, no, and he runs over the other side of this dirt mound that you can't see from the parking lot. Mr. Belkey runs around the other side, he stands on the mound, he looks out, and what he sees is just hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of acres of giant Douglas fir trees for the majority of the time, you can see all underneath the canopy of the trees, and all you see is giant trees. And he doesn't see Sammy. So they search for Sammy Belkey for over 2 weeks, and they don't find anything. They find nothing of this boy. And this is one of those cases, to me, that there was sort of an epiphany, is that Sammy had a disability. He was mildly autistic. As will be a constant theme in many of the cases of the kids who disappear, they disappear at an age where they either cannot talk, or they have a disability and they can't speak, or they come back and they don't remember what happened. And that occurs so many times, it's just hard to believe. And in this case, Sammy was never found. And he was not that far from his dad. And his dad got up to that mountain pretty soon, and he wasn't there. And you would think, well, it happens every once in a while, but how often does that really happen? Well, in the 1960s, it happened 2 times in 2 different parks under highly suspicious circumstances that I believe. One occurred in Yellowstone National Park, and one occurred in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I spent a great deal of time going out to Great Smoky Mountains National Park and researching this event. The boy's name was Dennis Martin. And Dennis and his dad and his grandfather and Dennis's brother went into the park, and they hiked in about a mile to a place called Spence Field up on the Appalachian Trail. And they were going to spend the night. And so they pulled out some chairs, they sat in the middle of this field, and in one of the first strange coincidences of this case, as the Martins are sitting in the field and the boys are running around, another family comes up and sits down next to them and introduces themselves and say, hey, can our boys play together? And Mr. Martin says, sure. And they go, oh, our name are the Martins too. I just thought that was very, very weird. So Mr. Martin's, the boys are all running around the field together, and they start to play hide and seek. So Mr. Martin's watching the boys, and Mr. Martin is a very, very sharp man. And he may be elderly now, but he has a wit as fast as anybody you know. And at the time, he said, I saw Dennis go behind this bush, no more than 35, 40 feet from me. And after a couple of minutes, something told me something's not right. Dennis didn't come out. And he got up and he walked over there, and his son wasn't there. And he ran several hundred yards down the Appalachian Trail, screaming Dennis's name, and Dennis didn't answer. And a lot of the papers at the time, this is one of the biggest searches in U.S. history. They brought in National Guard, they brought in the Green Berets, they brought in everything you could imagine. Air Force, helicopters, Coast Guard, everybody. Several thousand people searched for this kid for 3 weeks. They found nothing. And
Wow.
it ruined Mr. Martin as a person. And he won't even talk to the media. So I was out there 6-8 months ago, and I had my full with this case. I know I knew it better than everybody, probably than him. Without saying anything to anybody, I went and I knocked on his door of his house. And he came out, he looked elderly, but he looked the same. And I told him who I was, and I said, you know, can I just have 5 or 10 minutes of your time and just answer a few questions? And he said, Dave, I made my wife a promise I wouldn't talk to the media anymore about this. It's ruined us as a family. It's haunted us for a lifetime. And I hope you can understand that. And I said, hey, I came all the way from California. I just have a few questions and I'll leave. But please, just a minute or two. He stepped out onto his porch and closed the door, and he gave me about 15 minutes of his time. And I asked him a series of questions. Namely, at the time, just before his son disappeared, if anything was unusual about that scene, did he feel odd, sounds, smells, anything? He said, nothing. He said, no, there was nothing strange about it at all. And I said, well, in the media, you were pretty outspoken that you thought your son was abducted. And he goes, I know he was. He says, there's no way my son could have gotten off that mountain as fast as he did without assistance. And I know my son wouldn't have gotten off that mountain or left a location where he could see me. There's no way. And I said, well, there's a strange part of the story where below where Dennis disappeared, there was a family that wanted to see bears. And so about 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet below where the Martins were located, down in a valley, there was a family called the Harold Key family. And the family was walking up a valley, and as they're walking, they hear this scream that's described as ungodly loud, the biggest scream they ever heard in their life. And they walk further up, and their son stops, and he says, "Hey, Dad, look there's a bear over there." And this is quoted in the newspaper. His dad says, "No, son, that's not a bear." And they point, and they see a two-legged person that they then describe running and hiding between trees. And they watch this go on. And then they leave, and the Keys thought, that's pretty weird, but nobody really to tell it to, so they go home. The next day, they read in the paper that Dennis Martin had disappeared up on Spence Creek, up above them, at about an hour and a half, 2 hours before they saw this. So they call the FBI, which had already been on the scene of Dennis's disappearance, and they say, "Hey, we will come out to the scene and show you exactly where we saw this." The FBI agent on scene says, "No, no, no, don't come here, we'll go there." So a member of the Park Service investigative unit and the FBI agent go out and meet Mr. Key. And at the time, Mr. Martin had the Park Service and the FBI promise him that if they found anything out, if they knew anything more, that they would come talk to him. They said yes. And Mr. Martin was a really hands-on guy. He was there every day. He never left. He slept in the grass. He's like the most committed dad you'd ever find, the kind of dad you'd want searching for you. And this went on, and eventually an article comes out in the paper about what the Keys saw. And Mr. Martin goes to the Park Service, "Why didn't you tell me this?" "No, we don't think it's important because we don't think your son could get to that location in that amount of time." He goes, "Really?" So he gets a hold of the head tracker for the National Park Service at the time, a guy named Dwight McCarter, who's now retired. And he goes to Dwight, who's probably one of the nicest, most straightforward guys in the world. And he says, "Dwight, this is what they're telling me." And Dwight says in proper English, "That's bullshit." And he goes, "Come on." So him and Dwight hike it from where they're at down to an area called Rowan's Creek. And they do it in about an hour and 20 minutes. And Mr. Martin goes back to the Park Service and says, "Hey, it can be done." They go, "Well, we don't believe it. The FBI said it can't be done, so we're just going to dump that. It's not important." So at the time I'm interviewing Mr. Martin, I'm reading all this in the paper, and I'm thinking, this isn't right. And in the Freedom of Information Act request we did against the Park Service, we got a very thick pile of reports. And ironically, there's not one report in that huge pile about this meeting with the Key family, when that is probably the biggest piece of evidence they ever had in this case.
Oh, man.
So I asked Mr. Martin, I said, "Mr. Martin, I understand when I read this case file, I couldn't understand why a report wasn't in there regarding the Key family observation." And he goes, "Well, it should have been." I said, "I agree. The Park Service employee was there. The FBI was there. Should have been a Park Service report." And so I said, "So tell me something." I said, after we have a 15-minute conversation, "Is there anything about this incident that wasn't in the paper that I should know?" He said, "Yeah, Dave, two things." He says, "First of all, you're not going to read it in any report. It's not in the newspaper. But when the Key family saw something on the hillside running behind trees, it had something on its shoulder."
Oh, man.
I said, "You're kidding me." They said, "Nope." He says, "It wasn't in the newspaper. The Park Service didn't want to talk about it. And you can ask Dwight McCarter because he knew that the Park Service knew this and didn't publicize it." I said, "Come on." He said, "Nope." And I said, "Well, anything else?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Do you know about the other disappearances of kids in the Great Smoky Mountains?" And I gave him a list of about 5 or 6 names. He goes, "Oh, you did your homework." And he goes, "Well, do you know who the FBI agent is on all those cases?" I says, "Ironically, I knew that there was this one guy, and I name him, that was on each one of these cases." He says, "Do you know what happened to the FBI agent?" I said, "No." He says, "He committed suicide."
Whoa. Woo. Oh, shoot.
So what I did was, I was with another researcher, and honest to God, guys, I swear to you this is the truth. Walked away from that, I had tears in my eyes. Hardest interview I've ever done in my life. As being a dad and just seeing the pain in this man's eyes, I can't. It just hurts just talking about it. But went back and met with Dwight McCarter. McCarter confirmed what Mr. Martin said. Now, I'll give you a little side note to this entire incident. This is probably the most researched incident I've ever done in my life. And you would think that this should be front page news in every newspaper in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is 30 miles out of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So what we decided to do when we broke the publicity on this book, that myself and another researcher would go to Knoxville and hold a press conference with the 4 major news networks and the major newspaper for Knoxville on this event. They showed up, we laid it all out. I gave them the contact information for Dwight McCarter. I gave them the facts of what Mr. Martin said. And do you know that this never appeared in any Knoxville publication ever or on their news?
I believe it because they were probably instructed not to, or they thought you guys were just high. I mean, people who are listening right now, something on 2 legs with possibly another human being over the shoulder. Okay, now, without mentioning what we think this is or what's going on, David is now coming out a little bit and giving you exactly what's, the weirdest part of these cases anyways. I want you to talk about, if you can, the berry bush, the little boy.
Let me ask.
Okay, Alan had the question. Go ahead.
On when I was reading the James Arthur one, and then I can't remember the lady's name at Shut Eye Peak. That is only like a couple miles from where I saw a Sasquatch, and that was the first thing I thought of on a lot of these sightings by the people going uphill, the clothes, the way they were removed, how far outside the search area they were in boulder fields. I mean, it was exactly where I saw Sasquatch, the higher ground in the boulder field. I mean, without him giving, what he thinks. I mean,
so let me back this up a little bit. I'm not going to give any of my opinions on this, but I think it's important that the people out there understand how much research we did. So when we interviewed Dwight McCarter regarding Dennis Martin, and I lay all this out for him, I asked him, I said, "Dwight, you give me a rational description of what happened up there." I said, "What is this thing that the Key family saw on that mountainside?" And McCarter tells us a story about, and people can believe this or not, that in the Smoky Mountains area of Kentucky, Tennessee, this region, there's a group of wild people. And the way he describes it is people like you and me who have been raised and lived in the woods, that are wild, live off the grid, live off plants, animals, and food, and they wear furs of what they kill, and they're lawless. And I said, whoa. I said, "Does the Park Service know this?" He says, "Oh, they know they're in the park every once in a while for sure." I said, "Why won't they acknowledge that?" He says, "They'll never acknowledge it because once they acknowledge it, they have to accept the liability for it." So we did a little more research, and I don't call this validation, but on a trail website about people who backpack on the Appalachian Trail, there were a couple of writings about people in 2009, 2010, that in the middle of the day, they say they were chased by men they couldn't identify down the trail, and they ran for their lives, and the people that were chasing them disappeared up a hill where they didn't think anyone could get up the hill. And then in our same book, there are stories of a woman who went missing on a trail, who was eventually found and described being chased for 2 days by somebody who she couldn't describe. But McCarter was steadfast in saying, and this is in the book, that these are wild people. And he even said that a National Park Service employee was jumped and attacked by one of these things in the late 60s. And it was at a time when the Park Service rangers weren't armed. And he said the guy drove away for his life and saved himself. So the point being in this story is that some people who were in higher positions in the government throw forward a fairly logical explanation for what seemed a completely illogical abduction. But what's truly bothersome to me is when you got a guy like McCarter, who extremely, extremely respected, and the press will not even interview him, will not even talk to him, will not even challenge the Park Service on what happened to the Martin family, and essentially leaves them out to dry.
Now, are they using this as an scapegoat? Because if I'm being chased by something that supposedly is wearing fur, clothes, from an animal, and if I look around and if I see this person's face, I know what a human looks like to an animal. But you're telling me that these people cannot describe them in great detail. Is that because they were far away, or you know what I'm getting at, right, Dave?
Absolutely, and unfortunately, I was never able to interview any of these people. And according to McCarter's description, he said these people are absolutely filthy. They'll put dark black. They never shower. They let their hair grow down to their shoulders. Obviously, he says they're never taking care of their beard or their hair. He says they look, in the book, this is quoting McCarter, they look like wild men.
Okay.
I mean, I've talked to a lot of Native Americans, and they tell me the same thing. In different tribes, even here in California, even.
Now, David, how can a wild man, let's say per se, that's 5'6", maybe 5'8", throw another human being over their shoulders and walk off with him or her? How can a wild man, being that a little boy or a 15-year-old boy or girl is not more than 20 feet from their family, and then all of a sudden they turn around and their son or daughter is now gone? How can a wild man simply grab that person and snatch them and pretty much are gone without their parents witnessing anything? I cannot imagine a wild man, as they're trying to put it, do these things. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute to me.
I think you're singing to the choir there. I mean, it's you're trying to apply logic to an illogical description. I mean,
that doesn't make any sense. Yes.
In this world, there's a lot of people that are quick to attack others and quick to attack any theory, and that's one of the reasons why in this book I didn't put any theories, I didn't put any conjecture. It's strictly facts. And still, there are those haters out there that think that they know the answers of what I put in the book. The truth is, it's all factual. This is what the people said. Take it for what it's worth.
All right, let's. I want you to talk about, if you can, the incident against. There are coincidences with your cases where they involve different areas where, like, for example, berry bushes. I want you to get into that. What is it? The 2-year-old, 3-year-old child, where he was with his son, the dad, not more than 5 feet. Is that correct? And all of a sudden gone.
Well, there's a series of those that occurred while they were berry picking. In fact, I put an entire chapter in the book about berry pickers that disappeared. There's 3 sub-chapters. There's one about farmers and ranchers, there's one about sheep herders, and there's one about berry pickers. And you think, how did he come up with that? Well, once you're going through the archives and you're digging and you're digging and you're digging, and you start seeing the same heading in different papers for different years about this person disappears, it's something you just can't ignore. Now, and go up to the Northern Cascades, there's a series, as weird as this sounds, in the middle of nowhere, there's a series of young boys that disappeared in the Northern Cascades area. And we're not talking about near any population zone. We're not talking about in a campground. We're talking about in the middle of nowhere. I'll give you a few examples. One example is a very young boy is with his mom. They're both Native Americans. They're in the middle of the forest, and they're berry picking. And the boy walks 15, 20 feet away from the mom, and she tells him, okay, you pick some, I'll pick some. Same thing we would all do as kids. And you could hear him, and she hears her son scream. She runs around this bush. She doesn't see him. She runs faster, and she hears the boy scream again. She runs as fast as she can, and she can't catch it. Hears him scream again, and that's it. She runs back to the tribe. They bring in the best trackers they've got, which are usually the best of anything that you can find, and they never find the boy. Now, in this same area of the Northern Cascades, there's an incident where a boy named Jimmy Duffy was in a camper with his sister and their cat. Jimmy was 2 years old. And the mom and the dad are walking around this area, and they went up there to go hunting. So they're about 100 yards away from this camper, and they're keeping it in sight. For just a few seconds, they step behind a tree so they can't see the camper, and they hear a scream. They run from behind the trees. They look, the camper doors open. They run as fast as they can back to the camper. Inside, they see the daughter still asleep. They see their cat asleep, and Jimmy's gone. They look around, and they don't see any tracks or anything. They search and search. They bring in law enforcement. They search and search. Well, right away, law enforcement starts thinking that the husband and wife wanted to kill the boy. So they focus all their energy on this. We're going to really investigate this family. Eventually, after 2 or 3 weeks, this family's so upset, they bring him down to Seattle PD, and they put him on polygraphs. And sure enough, the husband and the wife completely passed. They had nothing to do with the boy's disappearance. Meantime, they've wasted all this energy focusing on the parents. This kid's gone, and he's never found. And there's a series of more disappearances like this involving young boys. A boy, his brother, his mom, and his sister walk up to some falls in an area near Long Lake in the Cascades. They're on this real rugged dirt road. It's more of a trail. And this boy isn't wearing shoes. He's 6 years old. So the other 3 members of the family walk 15 feet inside of this little covered area to look at this waterfall out of sight from their son. They come out no more than 5 minutes later, the boy's gone. They said, wait a minute, there's no place for this kid to go. They're looking around, he's in bare feet, he can't go anywhere. Huge search. The man is in the military, they bring in resources, they search everywhere you can imagine. The boy's never found. And I can tell you story after story like this in close proximity to parents. Sometimes there are berries involved. If they find the kid, there's no clothing. During or right before the search starts, bad weather hits the area that causes a problem with the search. People could say, well, this is just very unusual. Yeah, it's very unusual, except you start to look at the maps of the U.S., and there are these certain clusters of disappearances. Northern Cascades, it's young boys. Around Crater Lake, I didn't go into the whole story around Crater Lake, it's young boys again, coupled with some other men. So there is consistency to these certain locations. And somebody saw that there was something real in this. I don't know who it was. And I got a call from the National Association of Search and Rescue. And they said, Dave, we have a conference in July up at Lake Tahoe. We want you to be one of the presenters. I couldn't believe it. So I'm going to go up there and I'm going to talk to them about what we learned. A couple of things that we learned from this is that don't stop at just what we generally believe to be the parameters that a 2-year-old boy could go. You need to look sometimes way beyond that. Here's an example. A boy was visiting his grandparents with his family in a city called Ritter, Oregon. And Ritter sits on the eastern side of Oregon, near the Blue Mountains. Sometime or another, this boy disappears. And family starts searching. It's about 6 o'clock at night. They can't figure out where this kid is. Big search all night, all into the next morning. Make a long story short, 15 hours after this boy disappeared, he's found 16 miles north of where he disappeared, laying in a dry creek bed, unconscious, in the middle of nowhere. He went over 2 mountain ranges and at least 2 or 3 barbed wire fences at 2 years old.
Okay. Do you guys understand out there what he's saying? I mean, these are all real stories, real facts, the evidence. I mean, he's not making any of this stuff up. It doesn't make any sense, but it's happening. It's scary. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about this because, I really don't want this to happen to any one of you guys who are listening. David, there is another case that you had. I don't remember where. Again, I keep going towards this, but the little boy and or the little girl picking berries with the father, and them finding the child something about the dog man.
Okay, so that was a wolf.
Okay.
And that was in northern Michigan.
Okay.
This was in the late 1800s, and what happened was that a guy owned a lumber mill way up north of Michigan, and there was a hill where he was cutting this lumber, and then he would use a team of horses to pull the lumber down the hill to where the mill was. And his little daughter, that was 3 years old, would run up to the back of on the back of the hill to where her dad was, jump on his carriage, and then make the ride down, watch him do his work, run back up as he took the horses up the other way, and this would go on all day. And by fluke, this girl disappears. And he and his wife, which are in this really remote area, search, and they can't find her. Real late that night, on a pure fluke, 2 hunters come into their camp, and they employ their services. They say, "Oh my God, we're glad you're here because our daughter disappeared." And these 2 guys say, "Well, we'll help." So the next day, they search all day. They're yelling her name. And this is another point in this search. When a small boy disappears and you're yelling his name, the kid's going to respond if he can hear you. And if he's close, obviously. And a lot of times I think we forget that one of the things we're going to do whenever our child disappears, we're going to be screaming for him. And it's only natural that our child's going to respond back to our voice. Well, in all these cases, that never happens. So this girl disappears. Very late the following day, they're a couple miles away, and they're near a river, and they're in a heavy swamp area. And they're moving out, and they call, and they think they hear something of the girl's muffled voice in the middle of this swampy area. They work their way to her, and they hear a huge splash, and they catch out of the corner of their eye this huge dark figure jumping into this river and swimming to the other side. They don't see really what it was. But they get to the girl, and she's standing on this log, and she's missing some pieces of clothing, and Dad grabs her, and they have a conversation, and he says, well, where's your hat? And she says, oh, wolf ate it. Where's your gloves? Oh, wolf ate it. And they say, well, why didn't you call? Why didn't you say something when we called you? And she says, he wouldn't let me. And then he asked her, he said, well, did you get anything to eat? And the girl said, yeah, the wolf brought me berries in its hand. And man said, berries? And she said, yes. So this story was in several different papers in, I think, 1873, 1874. It was reprinted again in like 1920s. And it's generally believed to be a true story because of the facts and the area. And the things that the people who read it have problems with, obviously, is that if a wolf's going to take a girl, they're not going to coddle it and take care of it. And as far as I know, no wolf has a hand that could be able to carry berries. But in this Eastern book, there's several stories that we chronicle where it talks about kids being taken by bears. Bears that coddle the kids, bears that feed the kids. But specifically, this girl said a wolf, and it was a giant wolf. So.
Okay, David. I want you to talk about one more case, then we'll let you go, because I think I've had you on long enough, and I know your voice is gonna go out on us here pretty soon. And I found this probably the most disturbing, and you've actually chronicled that in your book. And it's the death in Yosemite with Evelyn Roseman, who was thrown.
Yes.
I want you to leave us off with that case, please, because I think that is pretty much going to sum up what we're working against here.
Yeah, sure. First of all, there's a book called Death in Yosemite, and it's by a man named Bruce Farabe, F-A-R-A-B-E, and it's called Off the Wall, Death in Yosemite. And Bruce was a long-term ranger in Yosemite, and he had access to files and things that we would never see and they would never let us see. And this story was chronicled because of Bruce's book and some other resources that we found. But the facts are that Evelyn went to Yosemite on a short vacation. She went for a hike one day, she disappeared. And she was found at the bottom of Nevada Falls. And in Bruce's book, again, he was able to see reports that we'll never see. He quoted the report as saying that she was, quote unquote, launched off the top of the cliff. And they went and they did a crime scene at the bottom, and at the point that they found where she made impact, they found brain matter in the middle of rocks on the river. And then they determined that obviously they didn't find her body there, they found it quite a distance from there. And they found serious abrasion marks in her inner uterine lining consistent with rape, meaning that there was some necrophilia involved, and obviously they have the semen because they handled it like a crime, but there are no suspects that was ever named. And this is one of those cases where we applied under the Freedom of Information Act. Of course, we were denied, and it's still an open case. That occurred in October of 1968.
So, just like everybody would know, when somebody falls off a cliff, they usually fall off, and they're, not more than probably 20 feet, 15 feet from the edge of the cliff at the bottom. Now, when they found this girl, or this girl, she wasn't close to the edge at the very bottom. She was like way far. How far was she? Did it specify in the book as far as where she landed?
You know, there were no definitive measurements that Bruce or Farabee supplied, but just quoting his words, it was launched.
Okay, so she did not fall. A human being, I don't think, could throw somebody that far of a distance. So what they're saying is she was launched. So I'm thinking her body was probably 50 feet off, even further from the edge of the cliff. And like you said, a human being could not do that. A four-legged animal could not do that. It's simple. It's common. I mean, that's common. I mean, it's just common freaking sense to me. Okay. So I want to leave with everybody with that right there. David, I appreciate you. You know what? How can people get your books? I know Amazon are out right now. Is there a website? I mean,
so actually, Amazon's never carried the books, even though if you look at the site, it looks like they have. They've never carried them. They want them, but we've never allowed it. You can only go to our site. That's Can-Am, C-A-N as in Nora, A-M, like Canadian American, Can-Am Missing.com. And just look for Missing 411, and you can read about the book, and at the bottom there's a link there to purchase it.
Okay.
But you can kind of read about other things we're tracking right now. There's a case involving a guy named Mika Truth, disappeared in New Mexico. It's a pretty interesting case. And we try to stay on top of things. But you know what, thanks a lot for being on your show.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. Now, we are going to go, now since we know James Arthur disappeared at where Alan goes frequently, we're going to head up there and do some investigating. So if you want to go, Alan knows these places like the back of his hand. This is where he grew up. If you want to come down with anybody, your investigators that want to go up there, give me a call, and we'll set up a weekend trip, and we'll take you to these places, because you know what? There's definitely something going on, and I would love to have you on board.
I appreciate it, Jeff.
Okay, David, have a good night, and I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
David, nice meeting you, man.
Thanks for the hospitality, guys.
Thank you. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Woo! There were still a lot more cases that would give you goosebumps, that when I heard on other shows that he has been on, that would just tear you up as far as kids going missing. He, again, in this book, does not give any theories on how these people went missing, but he gives you the facts, the evidence, and everything occurring. Hold on here. Just got a UFO report. It just came in a little bit ago at, what was it, Herndon and?
It was 99 and Olive.
99 and Olive.
It's been on the chat. Maybe right before we go off, we can call him and he can describe it.
Okay, most definitely. So, my whole attitude in camping has changed 180 degrees, and this is why. People's kids are missing right in front of their parents, and you have heard how and where, but as far as what is going to be up to you to make that judgment. You have been given some of these cases with a lot of the evidence, and to me, common sense is telling me it's not a four-legged animal and it's not a human being. When these people go missing, especially children, in a matter of freaking seconds, they're gone. I mean, you've heard their parents running after them and their child screaming for dear life. And, if that was me, I would be just running like you would never believe, like I've never run before. But they're gone in a heartbeat. Again, you heard that what appeared to be somebody walking with dark hair and something over the shoulders. Okay, that to me right there says it all. Okay, I don't have to tell you what it is, and he doesn't have to tell you what it is, but when you read this book, he's pretty much telling you what it is without giving the name of what we think it is. Now, supernatural, paranormal, you can take it however way you want, but this is happening, and the forestry department is keeping it hush-hush, because if word got out that this was happening and how it's happening, and it would just ruin the national parks as we know it today. So, it's is that it right there? Okay, the website for the books Missing 411. It's Can-Am Missing. It's all one word? Yeah? Are you sure that's it? You typed it in, or? Yeah. Okay, it's C as in Charlie, A-N-A-M missing.com. Can-Am-Missing.com. Again, Charlie, Apple, Nora, Adam, Mary, then the word missing, all one word, .com. Can-Am-Missing.com. I'll put it on my Facebook wall after we get off tonight.
I got a link on chat already.
We got a link on chat,
Yeah.
and we're going to put more links on the Facebook wall, because there are still so many other cases in these books that unbelievable. And again, I am a family man. Ellen is a family man, and so is Jimmy. We do not want you to go up and not come back down without your children, because I don't know what I would do if that ever happened. Okay, so you need to keep your kids and your wife and your family close by. I'm not saying you cannot go camping anymore, go hiking, but you need to have a system now to keep your people. I mean, I went and pulled up. I had people call me text me on my Facebook message about recent missing people in Yosemite. More of them just recently. We're talking 2011. We're talking a lost hunter, Robert Willis of Dinky Creek. Okay, this is 11/23/08, and he didn't have this in his book, because I remember him saying he could have wrote a whole freaking book on Yosemite alone with all the cases that he has. Okay, a lost hunter, Robert Willis, went out hunting like he's done every year by himself. One year he did not return. They found his truck where he usually parks it, and they never found a body. His family, to this day, every year, still goes out with all his family, his sisters and brothers, and they go look for him. Since 2008, they're still doing it to this day, because they want to find his body. To this day, they haven't found his body. Another one, Clovis woman seeks more info on her death. This is from the Fresno Bee, August 15th, 2009. Boyfriend and a girl, 20 years old, were up camping. This is at, just says Rugged Sierra, Granite Cliffs near Washawn Reservoir. Okay? They were up near a stream. They both took different paths to the campsite. He got there before she did. Never found. To this day, she has never been found. I have other ones.
Those two places is the same one on the show we did of 10/11/02 of their abduction.
This is freaking. I mean, this is happening right now. I mean, starting probably tomorrow, all the way till winter. Watch the news. You're gonna have people go missing in the Yosemite Sierra Mountains like crazy. Probably starting right around summer, because that's when people start taking summer vacations. The kids are out of school, they're gone up to Yosemite and camping. I guarantee you, start watching the news, and you're going to have people go missing hiker, missing whatever. But that's the only thing you're going to hear is they went missing. But you'll never hear that they found the body. They found the person. It's as simple as that. Okay, we're going to call Jeff. Is this your son?
Yeah, my son.
Your son saw something at where again?
99 and olive.
99 and olive. Now,
This is crazy, man.
Now the chat is going off the hook right now, or?
Oh yeah. They all want to hear about this.
Okay.
So
All right. Let's call him.
let's give it to them.
40. Okay, we're calling Jeff. Alan's son just saw something at where?
Olive and 99.
Olive and 99.
It looks like around 8:20.
8:20.
Like, is he gonna answer his phone?
Katrina Harrow. Record your message at the tone.
Is that the right number?
That isn't even the right number, is it?
Stand by, guys. We're getting the number. Let's try it again. Hold on. No.
You want to try it on this one?
No, I mean, my phone works.
Hello?
Hey, Jeff?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Jeffrey with SPS Radio. I got your pop here. Hey, so
Yeah,
what,
dude.
so what? So,
Crazy, man.
all right, tell me what did you just see? And you're talking Olive and 99?
Yeah, all of the night I was driving home from work.
Tell me.
It was still daylight outside, enough daylight to where I could see, pretty good.
Okay.
And I was going down, and it was off, not over the zoo side, but over the other side, where all the hotels and motels are.
You right?
It was about three stories up. And like I said, I'm not a skeptical guy. Okay, you can ask anybody. I try to explain everything before I say anything.
Now,
And there's no explaining it, dude.
Alan is nodding his head. Says, "Yeah, you're one of those." Okay, so describe it. What was it? I mean,
Well, it was definitely round, dark. It was like I don't want to say black, but I guess it was more like a smoke up on top. At least the part that the underside, I don't want to say the top, but the part that I could see was kind of smoky. And it wasn't like what you think of your stereotypical UFO saucer shape. It looked more like I don't even know how to explain the shape of it. It's kind of like more of kind of a coffee can, sort of, only not so straight that it kind of went out. I know that gives the description of a balloon, but it was not a balloon. They had a light inside it, right inside the middle, just this big old bright white light pointing straight down.
and this
And
was
I was like,
and this was over those hotels and motels out there on Motel Drive.
yep, and it wasn't a helicopter. I mean, I took off, jumped off the very next exit, flipped back around, went back, and it was gone. And I went back around again and made another U-turn and went back. Gone. There's nothing there. But it was low enough for me to be able to tell, and daylight enough for me to be able to say it was not a helicopter, for sure. It was not an airplane, for sure. It was not a balloon, like people always say, you hear weather balloon, weather balloon. It was not a freaking weather balloon. I don't know what the heck it was.
Huh.
I don't want to say it's something from outer space or whatever. I just know for me, I cannot say what the heck it was.
Well, I mean, you saw a UFO, an unidentified flying object. That's what that was.
Exactly.
Totally unidentified.
Unidentified. So, well, sweet. Let's hope we get some calls on it, or hopefully somebody will come back and call in, or I get an email or a text later on. But all right, Jeff, I appreciate you letting us know about this. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, thanks for giving me the time. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, see you guys. See ya.
All right, later.
Sweet.